am honored that I'm able to sit on the Public Safety Committee where this first was heard this year and shared my own story about being traumatized, coming home to deal with the fact that my house alarm had gone off. I was met by law enforcement who were there to really help me, but all of my trauma, all of my fears bubbled up during my interaction with them. I have had the privilege to sit with Dr. Weber as my seatmate to see her ruminate this entire session on this one bill, and every day having conversations about this bill and the impact that it can have across the state. The fears, the cries, the testimonies of advocates, of victims, of law enforcement on the necessity for this bill. And the reality is, you know, that it is a game changer in the sense that it is asking us as the state to take responsibility for the fact that so many black and brown unarmed men are being and have been shot and killed by law enforcement without their cries for help being heard. But the reality is, it's not that much of a game changer because the autonomy, it is still linked to the autonomy that is held by district attorneys' offices across the state. And they still hold the safeguards as it relates to law enforcement. We are not going to wake up on Thursday to a whole new world. But hopefully we will wake up and say that we have opened the door for real conversations to happen about how our law enforcement is probably overworked and not properly trained and over-traumatized. How our law enforcement no longer has the trust of the communities they are asked to protect, and probably how law enforcement fears for their lives when they go into those very same communities. That formula is combustible. The fact of the matter is that so many black and brown and poor communities want to call the police when something's going on. They're looking for help, but they're afraid to because they don't want that call to turn into some other conversation that ends up in them being arrested or killed. I want my family to be protected like anybody else's. I want to make sure bad people are kept at bay just like anyone else. And Lord knows, I want law enforcement to believe in me, because if they believe in me, they will protect me. And I will see that, and it will resonate, and I will then work with them to make sure that the communities that we are all living in, that we all love, are safe. This bill is about that. This bill is the first step in a number of steps that do talk about race, that talk about class, that talk about bias, that talk about fear. We are afraid. We are afraid of each other. We are afraid of ourselves. And instead of talking, we are running from or shooting. And all good people lose on both sides of the equation when that becomes the norm. So I am hopeful that this bill is going to get off this floor. I am glad that the heavy hitters have joined you as joint co-authors to say we as the state of California are going to take responsibility for all of our residents, all of our constituents, regardless of who they look like, regardless of their income or color or stature, because we have a responsibility to protect them all. So I thank you for keeping this going and for your tolerance, and I stand with you always in support of AB 392.